Hey everybody, today's a special anniversary date. 50 years ago, today, April 10th, 1964, this album was released. The second Capitol album from the Beatles in the United States. The Beatles' second album. And I have to say that, the Beatles released a lot of albums in the short time they were together when you consider it. And not only regular albums from the UK and also the US, but all kinds of imports and compilations, different configurations. But I have to say, out of all of those albums, whether you talk about hundreds of albums or thousands, maybe, imports, bootlegs, my very favorite Beatles album, bar none, is this one, the Beatles' second album. Now, I was just 2 years old when this album came out, so I don't have any real memories of it exactly at that point. But my mom tells me that when I was 3 years old, I used to run around the house singing Beatles songs like She Loves You, Yeah, 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 and things like that, and the song Help it would come out in '65. So definitely I was a Beatles fan at a very early age. It's also funny that I always considered myself more of a second generation Beatle fan. You know what I mean? Because I kind of really grew up in the 70s mostly, and that's when I really started collecting the Beatles. But somebody said to me once, an older Beatle fan who was around at the right age for Beatlemania, said to me, "No, you were a Beatle fan. If you liked the Beatles when you were 3, 4, 5 years old, and 6 years old, and if you had some of their records that your aunts and uncles bought you, and you played this stuff and liked it, you were a fan. You're a first-generation fan." Never really gave that a thought. Well, anyway, this is following the Beatles' debut Capitol album, Meet the Beatles, which I did a review of on that anniversary in January. And why is this my favorite Beatles album? Of all time, of any kind, of any country, of any release? Well, the cover, I think the cover is great to start out with it. I mean, you would think, big deal, just a bunch of pictures slapped together here in different orders. There's something about the configuration of this that I really enjoy. And might as well open it up, because when I do these reviews, I like to show a little bit of the inserts or inner sleeves, anything it came with. I'm noticing that I do not have the inner sleeve for this, but I'm sure I can get it from somewhere, another album or something like that. I believe it was the blue inner sleeve, so it's not really an accurate representation. And here's pretty good quality Capitol. This one is. This is, of course, the Rainbow Capitol. It's funny too, when I was collecting Beatles albums, really got into collecting Beatles albums, I'm going to say the year was, when I really got into it, around 1977. So I was like a mid-teenager, around 15 years old, and I was really starting to buy a lot of records. And back in those days, they had a lot of stores that you could go to, news stores, and buy records. One of them was TSS, Times Square stores. And the good thing about TSS was they had an import section. So I noticed when I started getting into the Beatles and collecting a lot of albums, after a while I started thinking that the US Capitol albums were not the best sound quality. That started to be prevalent. You think, wow, there was a lot of echo and reverb, duophonic sound and stuff added to these releases. But funny enough, I used to go to TSS, and with their import section, I was able to buy the UK albums, which is really, back then anyway, the way I preferred to hear my music. I found out that I liked Japanese pressings. Japanese vinyl was really, really clear. If you bought a Japanese album with the obi strip on the side, wow, the Beatles songs really sounded great. And the same thing for German imports, the UK originals. A lot cleaner sound than I was used to. Now, the weird thing about that is, I've changed my stance on that now in later years. It turns out now I actually prefer these albums now, the US Capitol pressings. I don't know why it is. Maybe part of it's a nostalgia thing. Maybe part of it is because, that's what I grew up with, and also the fact that I don't know, it just makes the Beatles sound a little more rocking to me. And that's what I'm going to get at why I love this album so much. I say it does rock along there because a lot of the tracks on here are old Motown songs and stuff like what we're listening to now, like Smokey Robinson's You Really Got a Hold on Me. There's a bunch of songs, like, let's go over them one at a time here. We start with Roll Over Beethoven, which was Chuck Berry's song. I love Chuck Berry's version, but I think this really does it a lot of justice, and George Harrison sings lead vocals on it. A really good start, kick off to the album, I think. Then you got Thank You Girl, which is one of my favorite early Beatles songs from the early days, where they have harmonica in there. And the reason I like this album so much, one of the reasons, is because that particular song, Thank You Girl, they used extra harmonica for this release. Back when growing up and getting into this stuff, this was really the only place you could hear that harmonica. They had an extra harmonica flourish at the end of the song and a few little beats in the middle of it. And to me, that's the only way to hear this. Anytime I go back to the so-called official or original way, from England, no offense, but it just sounds like it's missing something, especially in the middle. During the bridge, there's like, who muted the harmonica sounds? Sounds like they took the mute button and turned off the harmonica. So, Thank You Girl on this album is the only way to go for me. I really love that song. And Devil in Her Heart, I don't know, that's another cover. Thank You Girl was an original. Devil in Her Heart is a cover version. It's not really one of my favorite Beatles songs. If I was going to pick a song on this album that I think is kind of weak, I might pick that one. But I mean, I still enjoy it. It's a George Harrison vocal. And I enjoy it. It's just not one of my favorites. The next song, Money. Wow. Money it's fantastic. Again, it bests the original. I love the original, but John Lennon's vocals on Money are really incredible. In fact, let's bounce ahead a couple of tracks to that here. I mean, especially with the reverb and the echo, and it just sounds really, really good. I mean, a lot better than the mono version. I mean, the mono UK version is kind of easy going. Very, it just, I don't know what. It's very light. It sounds a lot lighter. This one's got a lot more energy to it because of the reverb that they put on it. But John Lennon, you really believe that when he's singing this song that he really wants money with all of his heart, gut, and soul. When he's screaming this vocal, I mean, he really wants that money. He's gonna get it, he needs it. So I really love this. Now the song "You Can't Do That" is the last song on side 1, and "You Can't Do That's" from the Hard Day's Night album over in England. But quite frankly, I think it fits wonderfully here as a closing song. A lot of people complain about the Capitol album, saying, well, this is not the way the Beatles intended them. This is just people, executives, putting the songs whatever they want. And I gotta say that I used to feel that way too. Oh, it's not pure. It's not the way the Beatles and George Martin wanted it. Oh, I'm going to disregard the albums. Hey, but I came to the point that it's a good album. A good album is a good album. If you want to get into semantics and whether or not it really is the wise thing to do because of the fact that it's not the way the band or the artist really wanted it, you can get into that if you like. But I used to get into that. But the thing is, hey, if it's an improvement, in a lot of cases, what I like about the American albums is that it's a lot of stray singles that, in some cases in England, you can only get on singles. I mean, it just so happens on this album, yeah, like if you wanted "Thank You Girl," for example, in England originally, it'd have to be the B-side of "From Me to You," and here in the Capitol series, it's on an album. I really like that. And the same thing you could say here was we open up side 2. That's a good segue. Okay, we'll segue into Long Tall Sally, which opens up side 2. That's the only Paul McCartney vocal on here, lead vocal. And Long Tall Sally was recorded in one take, much like John Lennon's Twist and Shout was only recorded in one take. That song was captured really fantastically. one shot with John. Well, same thing with Long Tall Sally for Paul. Long Tall Sally's a great rocker the way the Beatles do it. And a couple of songs here that open up side 2, followed by I Call Your Name. I Call Your Name is the second song on side 2. Great John Lennon song. I think he wrote some of it when he was 15 or 16, he had always said. And the thing about Long Tall Sally and I Call Your Name is that's another example where if you were over in England, you had to buy the EP, 4-track EP, extended play. Nothing, I love collecting that stuff, and that's the way it was intended. When they went into record Long Tall Sally and I Call Your Name and 2 other songs, those songs were intended to be an extended play 7-inch record. But it's so much better having it contained, flowing with other songs that fit, I think. That's just the way my mind is these days. I used to be a purist about it, not so much anymore. I Call Your Name is really terrific. I'm not very technically oriented. I can't tell you technically about instruments and notes and things. I can just tell you what I like and don't like. Third song on this album, Please Mr. Postman. Please Mr. Postman is a great version of the oldies song. It's another cover version. There are a lot of covers on this album, and as I just take a moment to count them, I'm going to say we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 11 songs are covers. 5 are originals. Please Mr. Postman, again, it's just a great vocal from John and the others. I'll Get You, again, I'll Get You is one of my favorite of all Beatles songs from the early days. I don't know what it is, the way they're singing it, having fun with it. In the middle of the song, during the bridge where they say, there's going to be a time when I'm going to change your mind, so you might as well resign yourself to me. Oh yeah. It's kind of like a little humorous way they say, oh yeah, then that middle part that I like. I'll Get You is the B-side. That's another good example. I'll Get You is another song, just like Thank You Girl. If you're living over there in England, and at the time this was released, and you wanted to get the song I'll Get You, you had to have the single of She Loves You. So I just like it all being together here. Speaking of She Loves You, that's the last song on this album. If you excuse me here a little bit. Yep, it's one of my favorite songs, no doubt about it. I'll Get You, followed by She Loves You. She Loves You, it's impossible, absolutely impossible to name my favorite Beatles song. I don't know how many people can do that. But I tend to pick She Loves You as my favorite Beatles song of all time. Why do I do that? Probably just because I can only imagine the way it sounded when it first came out, especially here in the States. It was like something you never heard of before. I personally will take She Loves You over I Want to Hold Your Hand as a better song. I like I Want to Hold Your Hand naturally, but I really, really like She Loves You. It just has a raw energy, hungry Beatles, power, the yeah, yeah, yeah catchphrase. I mean, that was something that wasn't, kind of like indicative of their style. That was like who they were and what they were. She Loves You, really a terrific classic. My favorite Beatles song if I had to pick one. And I really don't want to have to pick one, So anyway, my favorite part's coming up in this song, so I'm going to get into it a little bit here. Here's the part that I like the best. I don't know, it's something about the way they sing it. Very funny. I don't... No, I'm really getting into this. Anyway, gotta try to remember to talk and not just listen. Okay, what can you say about history? The history of this is that Dave Dexter was the guy's name. Dave Dexter was, from what I understand, an old fuddy-duddy. Kind of like how I'm getting now. We didn't really like a lot of the new music out there. He kind of liked old stuff. I don't know if it was classical that he liked, and you know, crooners and old vocalists. So he really had no use for the Beatles, and he had to do something with this album when it came out. So he tried to like add all this, like I said, echo, reverb, and I forget the name of it. I should be better prepared here, but is it duophonic sound? Here it is. So all I know for sure is that at first I too was like, oh, this is terrible. It's like you're putting like all this echo, but there's something about it now where it really holds up. It really toughens up the album, makes it a real rockin' album. That's why I love it so much. It rocks along, and it just has like a merciless attack of songs. If you listen to this in one run, it really just delivers constantly. And being that I'm such a John Lennon fan, I like that John has a lot of vocals on this album. That's another reason why it's probably among my favorites. As much as I like the other Beatles, it's funny, you know, as I said, Ringo has no vocals on this. George Harrison has 2. Paul McCartney only has the 1, Long Tall Sally, which in a way isn't really fair, but no offense to Paul, he does great ballads and things. But you don't have anything here like, say, Till There Was You, which I also like. That was on the Meet the Beatles album. They put it on there. In that particular case, you know, he softened it up a little bit with a show tune, Paul, you know, doing a little crooning there, which is fine. But this is just straight ahead, balls to the wall rock and roll, with John commanding most of the vocals. So the whole Dave Dexter thing and John's vocals and Motown music on here, you know, and stuff like that. Some of the black artists that the Beatles admired, they copy here and sing. It's just a great package. You know, trying to say as much as I can, get all my thoughts in about it. Dave Dexter, in a way, as far as I'm concerned now in retrospect, did us a favor. Now, they recently released the Beatles US box set, and I have it over there somewhere. I bought it for completeness sake, as a completist. But the Beatles' second album version on there, this is why another reason why I like vinyl better than CDs. Look at the difference in size. But I'm sticking with this one. This is the first release of the Beatles' Capitol albums that they put out. And the reason is because this one has the original Dave Dexterized sound. You know, the all this kind of reverb and stuff. Whereas the one that came out recently, anybody who has the US Capitol set that just came out in the box, they decided they weren't going to use the old, echoey kind of versions that originally were supposed to be on a lot of the American albums, and instead they went ahead and decided what they were going to do was they were just going to use the 2009 remasters and make it a little cleaner, which to me defeats the whole purpose. You're going to put out the US Capitol box set, you put it out the way it's supposed to sound. I know these are different times now, and the quality's gotten better and this and that, so, you know, in a way, why why go back to that? You know, it's still the U.S. albums, and as far as sequencing goes, and a lot of people who are Beatle fans have split opinions on this. I've encountered some fans who feel that they like the fact that they went ahead and just used brand new remasters, or the 2009 remasters to be exact, for the most part, I think. Maybe I'm wrong there, I don't know. I didn't do enough research lately on it. I think that some of them might have been some George Martin 1987 mixes. I think some people have helped me out with that, corrected me on that. Excuse me. But for me, when I want to hear it in the car, and I want to play the CD of it, I go to the old Capitol album set that came out, you know, with this one. You know, I don't go for the other one. Well, that's it, folks. Happy anniversary to the Beatles' second album.